September 1941. Northern Norway. The sea was angry that night. Cold waves crashed against black rocks with a force that seemed determined to tear the coastline apart. Wind screamed through the cliffs, carrying with it the smell of salt, rain, and distant smoke. Above the water stood a solitary lighthouse, its white tower barely visible beneath layers of storm clouds rolling across the Arctic sky. The beam swept across the darkness. Again. And again. To most people, it was simply another lighthouse doing what lighthouses had always done, guiding ships away from danger. But during the autumn of 1941, nothing along the Norwegian coast was simple anymore. Germany had occupied Norway for more than a year. The invasion had come swiftly in April 1940. Within weeks, one of Europe's longest coastlines had fallen under Nazi control. Ports were seized. Roads were monitored. Fishing villages were watched. German patrol boats moved through the fjords like silent predators. Yet despite the occupation, resistance continued. Quietly. Patiently. In homes, churches, schools, and fishing harbors, ordinary Norwegians searched for ways to push back against a system that seemed impossible to defeat. Among them was a lighthouse keeper named Erik Larsen. He was not a soldier. He carried no medals, no rank, no weapon. At 48 years old, his life had become a routine measured by tides, weather reports, and maintenance logs. Every morning he climbed the narrow spiral staircase to inspect the lantern. Every evening he checked the fuel reserves and watched the horizon. The sea had always been predictable. Empires were not. That evening, Erik stood near a rain-covered window overlooking the water. His hands were rough from years of work. His beard carried streaks of gray. The war had aged everyone, but isolation aged people differently. The lighthouse stood miles from the nearest town. Most days he spoke only to seabirds and the wind. Yet lately, something had changed. He had begun noticing lights. Not lighthouse signals. Not fishing vessels. Something else. Small flashes appearing briefly in the darkness before vanishing again. One flash. Pause. Two flashes. Silence. The first time he saw them, he assumed they were reflections from the storm. The second time, he became curious. By the third week, he knew they were deliberate. Someone was signaling. The question was who? And why? Far below the lighthouse, hidden among jagged rocks, waves exploded into white foam. Erik lifted an old pair of binoculars and searched the darkness. Nothing. The sea revealed very little to those who demanded answers. But it often rewarded patience. Days later, the answer arrived unexpectedly. A fishing boat appeared shortly before dawn. It was small even by local standards. The hull showed signs of hard use, and the men aboard looked exhausted. Their faces were pale. Their eyes carried the hollow expression common throughout occupied Europe. Fear had become a language everyone understood. When the fishermen stepped onto shore, Erik immediately sensed something unusual. There were too many people aboard. Women. Children. An elderly man barely able to stand. Refugees. The realization hit him instantly. These were not fishermen returning from the sea. They were people escaping. For months, rumors had circulated across Norway. Families disappearing overnight. Resistance members vanishing before arrests could be made. Small boats crossing dangerous stretches of water toward neutral Sweden or hidden safe zones farther north. Most stories sounded impossible. Many probably were. Yet here stood living proof. One exhausted mother clutched her daughter against the cold wind. The child could not have been older than 7. She looked terrified. Not because of the storm. Because of the uniforms. German soldiers had become a shadow hanging over every decision. Every journey. Every conversation. The fishing captain approached Erik cautiously. Neither man spoke immediately. The silence carried its own weight. Finally, the captain glanced toward the lighthouse. "You've seen the signals." It wasn't a question. Erik nodded. The captain looked back toward the refugees. Then toward the sea. Then toward the lighthouse again. "The signals help us find safe routes." For a moment, only the wind answered. The captain continued. "There are more people coming. Not dozens. Not hundreds. More. Every week. Every month. Teachers. Students. Resistance couriers. Families. Anyone desperate enough to risk the sea rather than remain under occupation." The problem was simple. The coastline was enormous. The weather was brutal. And German patrols were becoming more aggressive with every passing week. People needed guidance. Someone who understood the currents. The rocks. The hidden channels. Someone positioned where few questions would be asked. Someone exactly like a lighthouse keeper. Erik listened without interruption. The request remained unspoken. Yet both men understood it. Helping refugees was not merely dangerous. It was a death sentence if discovered. The Germans showed little mercy toward those accused of aiding resistance networks. Entire families could suffer consequences. A single decision could destroy everything. The captain eventually left. The refugees disappeared into the landscape. The sea reclaimed its silence. But Eric could no longer pretend ignorance. That night he climbed to the lantern room alone. Rain tapped softly against the glass. The great beam rotated steadily across the dark water. Out there, somewhere beyond the horizon, were people searching for hope. Not victory. Not revenge. Simply hope. A place to sleep without fear. A future beyond occupation. The lighthouse beam swept across the sea once more. Then Eric noticed something. Another flash. Far in the distance. Brief. Almost invisible. Then another. Someone was waiting. Someone trusted that a light in the darkness might guide them home. And for the first time, Eric began to wonder whether his lighthouse had been built for more than ships. Perhaps its true purpose was only now beginning to reveal itself.
Your support gives us strength to create more stories. Please like and subscribe.